try and fix it. Hello.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to SPARC's first expert chat. I knew that this was gonna be tough. This is my first ever expert chat.
We are the first ever expert chat.
That's true. I'm Kaylee Wood. This is Natalie Dewan. We're both from Ontario Presents. We're it's an organization that supports presenters in Ontario. We're really excited to be doing this expert chat on resources, which I hear is a topic that was of interest to the community. And so we are here with you today. Just a housekeeping note is that we can see your questions if you type them into the comment box. We would love that. That would give us something to respond to, but there's a bit of a delay. So if you're writing a question, just make sure it's a complete question and it's not just like
tell us more about that, because then we might see it 5 minutes later and
just
we
have no idea
don't remember what you're talking about.
Yes. Okay, so just a little bit about us. We figured for fun we'd introduce each other. So I'm going to introduce Natalie. Natalie Dewan is our Membership Services and Communications Coordinator. Mm-hmm. Yes, okay, which basically means she's our resource queen. She's definitely the right person to be doing this chat today, and I'll try to give her most of the time to talk about all the resources. She writes our newsletter and runs our website, all that good stuff. Natalie has a master's in arts admin from the University of Maastricht. Yeah, it's in the Netherlands, which I think is super cool. And she's from Mississauga, and she sees a ton of theater in Toronto. So she's
not as much as you, but yes. Cool. So Kaylee is our network and touring coordinator. Our titles are very long and confusing. So our network and touring coordinator, and so she organizes all the block booking to arts touring around Ontario, and coordinates our networks of presenters, which she will talk more about. So Kaylee sees one play a week at least, and knows what's touring in Ontario and what's good, sees lots of stuff both personally and for her job. So she's the person to go to if you want to know what's happening in performing arts in Ontario and how to connect with presenters across the province. Yeah.
Just a little bit about Ontario Presents. So that's the not-for-profit arts service organization that we both work for. We're a small little organization in terms of staff size. We've got 3 full-time staff plus a few contract staff. But we try to have a really big impact. Our office is right here, where we are right now at the Centre for Social Innovation in Toronto. So the focus of Ontario Presents, as you can tell from the name, is to support mainly presenters. Now, we're a network, and our members do include artists, agents, managers, supporters from all across the performing arts field, but we do focus on just helping presenters maximize the impact that they can have in their communities. And to us, that means a lot of curatorial development work, so helping presenters not only discover new kinds of performing arts work, but also learn more about it, how to critically respond to it, how to find out what's good. We have special focus through our Ontario Dances and Theatre Connects programs on contemporary dance and independent theatre, and just getting those touring more across Ontario and getting them outside of Toronto. So we're really excited to sort of have a relationship with SPARC, because we think it's really important to get performing arts out into rural and remote communities and just beyond urban hubs. Mm-hmm. We do block booking, as Natalie mentioned, which many of you probably know about, but if you don't, just the practice of presenters working together to book an artist and create a tour for them, and it makes it more efficient for the artist, because you can have a viable tour. Especially going up north or into rural communities, it makes it a lot easier if you are going up for several shows and not all the way to Sioux Lookout for one show. And then there's a benefit to the presenters, of course, because often that can come with a lower fee, like you're sharing the travel costs, that kind of thing. So that's a major piece of what we do. We try to provide resources that will help our members. So, that's a lot of what Natalie's going to talk about, our e-newsletter, our webinars. And whatever they need, we try to respond to. We also run Ontario Contact, that may be where you've heard of us, which is an annual performing arts conference in Ontario. It moves around each year to a different host community, and that involves artist showcases, roundtables on key industry topics, a keynote speaker, and just social opportunities to meet other people in the field. So that's a bit about Ontario Presents. We have put a few key links in the description for the video, and the link to the Ontario Presents website is one of them. So if you want any more info about what we do, or about Ontario Contact or whatever, check it out there. Yeah. Did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so. Ontario Contact does have its own website that we forgot to include, but there's a link to it from the Ontario Presents website. You can just click at the top, Ontario Contact.
Honestly, Google it.
Yeah.
It's 2018.
That's also an option. And it's going to be in September this year, which is a little bit earlier than usual.
Oh, yeah, September 13th to the 15th in St. Catharines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I just actually wanted to add one more thing about Ontario Presents as an organization. We've been in a lot of transition lately about why do we exist and what we want to do to serve the performing arts field. And we kind of came up with this idea that it's really about helping us move beyond a transactional model that's like, I'm selling this show, you buy this show, to a world where like artists and presenters and everyone involved in the performing arts field, that we're just a community, that we all have relationships with one another, and that we're all figuring out what we can do to support each other's work. So to that end, we are doing more work around like introducing artists and presenters, not just in a like, here's how much my show costs and when I'm available to tour way, but also in a way that's like, okay, how can I contribute to your career? I'm a presenter, and then how can the artists contribute to your community, and what can they bring, and in what innovative way can they do it, whether it's a show or a residency.
Yeah, I think really a focus on building relationships, which fits really well with what SPARC does.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that because I think that non-transactional model really frames everything that we do, and that's the way that we're approaching it. So to that end, I thought I'd talk a little bit more about what I do at, framing this around resources. The way that I come into that conversation is through the sort of mini networks that I steward through Ontario Presents. Honestly, I think that really our best resources in this community are each other, and then we get a lot out of just working cooperatively and sharing knowledge. So that is why Ontario Presents likes to support smaller informal networks of presenters that share something in common, whether it's their type of programming or the size of their venue or not having a venue, anything like that, to share knowledge. So I'll just highlight kind of the three main networks that I've been working with. One is the Northern Young Audience Network. So currently there's 11 presenters in Northern Ontario that are volunteer organizations that don't necessarily have their own venue, and they present approximately 5 shows per year. So our support to them is like monthly phone calls to help decide on artists to block book through the network, and those phone calls are also an opportunity to just share, like, oh, well, how did you file this with your taxes, and which grants are you applying for, and that kind of knowledge, even though it seems really informal when you're in the moment, I think is totally invaluable to those groups. And what I'll preface to all of these networks is like, if you are interested in getting involved, these are mainly for presenting organizations, but definitely if you're interested, drop me a line. Oh, we didn't actually put our contact info in the description.
We'll add it in a
comment. We'll comment it
later.
You can email me. It's Kaylee at ontariopresents.ca. So if you are interested, let me know. Another network that we're kind of stewarding is the Ontario Classical Music Network. That is a group of volunteer music presenters that focus mostly on classical music, and they work together. They don't have a formal block booking process, but they're often sharing information on different artists, recommendations, have you seen this person, and they share a lot of knowledge about how to keep classical music going in more rural areas. And they are totally looking for new members. So if you're interested in either like starting an organization to bring classical music to your community, or if you already have one and you want to network with your peers, definitely I can link you into them. They're an amazing group of people that are really committed to keeping that work alive, which is so fantastic. Mm-hmm. I love that. And the most recent mini network that we've started is the Community Presenters Network. I say we, really a couple of presenters, including Eric Gowdy, who's involved with SPARC, said, listen, there's a big Ontario Presents network, but it's often focused on the larger presenting organizations. A lot of our members are municipal performing arts centers, and they just have a different set of concerns than people that are working with on a smaller scale. So he said, well, why don't we have our own mini network, which was fantastic. I love to see that kind of
initiative.
That is the word I was looking for. I was going to say innovation.
Well, that's both.
It's also that. And so the Community Presenters Network is a group of presenting organizations, mostly in rural and remote communities, a few not, that are smaller scale. So either they don't have a venue or they have less than 300 seats. They're not booking huge artists, but by working together to block book, they can book artists that are a little bit more, that would have been more expensive if they were booking them just for a one-off show. But I think the real value of that network is just being together. We have monthly phone calls, just sharing ideas, sharing resources. What do you do for accommodation if you don't have a hotel in your town, that kind of thing, which is a great benefit to be able to ask each other. So I think
sometimes it's like those kinds of logistics that people don't really think about, but then when you're in the moment, you're like, it would be really nice to talk to someone else who's had to deal with this.
Exactly, and it can seem small at the time, but once someone has an interesting solution to one of those problems or asks you a really good question about like your liquor license, you're like, oh yeah, I never thought about it, but
there's so many things to deal with. Yeah.
And once you build trust amongst a group of presenters, or really anyone, I highly recommend just whatever you're doing to sort of be in community with your peers in the field. Once you build trust, there's so much you can do with that. And for us, it's a lot about recommending artists, and not just from block booking, but as I was talking about with the Classical Music Network, just like, oh, I saw this really great artist, they might work really well in your venue, or I know that I really like that person's programming because I've seen it in the past, it's been great, so I'll definitely take their recommendation. Yeah, so that's a little intro to the networks that we've been stewarding. I think I'm going to flip it over to Natalie because she's been doing all the cool resource stuff for Ontario Presents.
Okay, I'm probably going to talk for a little bit now, but I'll try not to go on too long about this. So we do have lots of resources. We are a service organization, so we want to provide professional development and support people in the presenting field however we can. So I'm going to talk a bit about our website and what's available on there. So it's ontariopresents.ca. A few things that I want to mention. There's lots of resources on there, so I encourage you to just go browse through, take a look, and email me if you have any questions. It's also just natalie@ontariopresents.ca. But I will go through a couple things. First of all, under network on there, which is all, of course, about our network, there's a map. It's called the Presenting Network Map. It's new in the past couple months, and it shows all of our presenter members. So it's only people who are a member of Ontario Presents and who are presenting work. But it does give you a really good look at where people are, and you could see if there's somebody in your area who you might be able to collaborate with. So I think that's a really useful resource. And then there's a tab called Resources that has tons of stuff from over the years, basically an archive of webinars and blog posts and articles that we have found or made over the years. And it's divided into stuff for volunteer presenters, professional, more full-time presenters, artists, artist management, and consultants and business providers. So whoever you are in the field, there's probably something for you on there. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. And then we have a blog, which is basically updates from the network. And we're hoping to do more of those in the coming months. But right now, the last few are mostly our Indigenous Artist Spotlight, which is once a month. We've been speaking with an Ontario-based Indigenous artist just about their work and what they would like to share with presenters about their work. That's been really interesting. There's some really cool interviews on there, so take a look at that. And then there's a couple blog posts about what's on tour through block booking. So what is touring in Ontario right now through Ontario Presents. And last thing on the website is there's a news tab, which is mostly right now links to our past e-newsletters. And then there's also, if there's any like really important pieces of news in the field, then we'll post that on there as well. But mostly it's the e-newsletter, which I'll talk about next. And then after I do that, I see a couple questions, so maybe we'll take those. So e-newsletter goes out once a month. Anyone's welcome to subscribe. Obviously, it is intended for people in the presenting field. So it's about updates from our network and then from the industry more broadly. So any updates going on there, as well as professional development opportunities. The Indigenous Artist Spotlight that I mentioned is always in the e-news, and grant deadlines coming up, and any conferences or events, and job postings in the field.
It's actually a really useful collection of different resources that you pull together, like the grants, the events.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. I mean, similar to the SPARC newsletter, which is also an amazing resource, but ours is more specific to presenting. And yeah, that's why we post it on the website under news, because then you can look at past months as well, and it is just a good archive of what's happening. So I think we should questions.
Yeah. I see a couple of great questions. I'll just address Rebecca's first because it's a bit shorter. Great question. How do the smaller communicate teleconference? That's a monthly teleconference for most of these small networks, and like for the Community Presenters Network, it's like the same time every month, and we know when that is. And I'll send out a reminder. For the Northern Young Audience, we like do a doodle poll every time and just pick the best date. I personally have found like just having the email list for the group has been a good way too. Often I'll send out a group email with like the doodle poll, and then someone will reply to it with a question for the group. And that, because these are smaller groups, like it might be 12 presenters or 15 that are on the email list, it's not too overwhelming. And we tried to have like a Slack group and, cool tech like that, but really people like email, and that's what we've been finding. So I'm really interested to see how the SPARC Facebook group goes. I think that's another type of media that people do use. Yeah. And that makes it really easy to have like a back and forth exchange. So we do try to have in-person meetings when possible. With everyone really spread out, it does make it really hard. So we sometimes try to do that as like an offshoot of an Ontario Presents event. Like if we're all going to be at Ontario Contact, I'll say, okay, well, let's all have lunch together on this day, and it'll be a chance to get together. Because, I mean, even though it's really tough, meeting in person is really the best way to build trust between a group and really become a network. So when possible, do try to do that. Great question. Now to John's question about what active partnerships do you have with First Nations groups, organizations that work in First Nations communities to introduce and grow these networks of artists, performers, and skill builders? Yes, that's a fantastic question. So for us, we're really all about building relationships between artists and presenters, and that's the way we approach working with First Nations and Indigenous groups. So any opportunity that we have to kind of bring presenters into the room with Indigenous artists, that's really important to us. We've had an Indigenous showcase at Ontario Contact. We host like dinners just to bring people into the same room. Again, not in the like booking selling mindset, but just like let's all talk about the work that we're doing and learn about each other. We're going to be running a professional development program for Indigenous and artists of color from Ontario and Quebec. To kind of just
dance focused.
That's dance focused, yes, absolutely. To kind of bring those. It's professional development just in the sense of skills of like pitching to artists and developing marketing materials, pitching to artists, pitching to presenters. Yeah. Thank you. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We're not an organization, like there are Indigenous organizations that are working very effectively with their communities. So we're not about taking that over. We just want to help build relationships so that presenters can bring amazing Indigenous artists into their communities and build relationships that way.
I think I would just add also, we encourage the presenters in our network to work with Indigenous groups in their own communities directly rather than through us.
Right, yeah,
so there's a lot of groups that like we don't work with directly, but we encourage the venues that we work with to connect with them and build those relationships in their own community.
Totally, and to that end, in fact, we've actually been involved in a project with IPA, the Indigenous Performing Arts Alliance, I think, and Kapakoa, which is the national presenting organization. It's been a really in-depth project to bring together a presenter, usually a municipal performing arts center, and an Indigenous cultural leader, in and around their community. Like bring those two together, not just once, but over many in-depth retreats to kind of build a strong relationships and see how they can support each other. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah.
And we always want to be doing more. I mean, we're always learning and just trying to figure out the best way to go about this work. We also have, this is a small one, but we have a document on our website on the About page, which is sort of a working document on protocols for presenters when thinking about working with Indigenous artists. It's not like a set of rules, it's just some things to think about if you're a presenter, non-Indigenous presenter, and you're trying to approach your local Indigenous community.
Mm-hmm. And then the spotlight that I just talked about is also something that it's not, you asked about active partnerships with groups. It's not a partnership with the First Nations group, but came out of conversations with Indigenous artists and Denise Balduc, who's an awesome Indigenous artist and like producer, yeah.
Cultural leader,
that's a good word. So that's really intended to just highlight some great Ontario-based Indigenous artists and introduce our presenters to work that they might not have otherwise been aware of. So feel free to comment if you have further questions. Hopefully that answers that. Okay, I have two more things that I want to talk about, and I'm aware that it's been 20 minutes. We also want to leave time for questions. So super quickly, our webinars are another great resource that I want to make sure to mention. Every year we offer a free series of webinars for arts presenters, and they're really intended to kind of fill knowledge gaps in the field and address professional development topics that people feel they would like more information on. So we do talk to presenters and ask them, like, what would you like to learn about? So this year we have 4 topics, and for each one we're offering one webinar for professional presenters and one for volunteer presenters. So it's the same information basically, but it's tailored more to just the different concerns of people with different time and resources. So we just did one on accessibility, and that's available on our website, ontariopresents.ca/webinar series.
That one's a really good one too, because it's just like quick and dirty, 5 things you can do.
Yeah, it's intended to just be like, here are some things you could do that are cheap and easy that would improve your accessibility and help you to be accessible for more people, basically. And that one, and then all of our past ones from the past like 4 years are available on the website as recorded webinars. And then if you want to join us for a live webinar, we have a few coming up. There's one this Wednesday. That one's for professional presenters, and then the same one next Wednesday for volunteers, and that's on creating effective boards. So it's board governance, basically, which is something that any nonprofit organization has to deal with.
Pretty much. And in fact, even though the webinars are targeted at presenting organizations, a lot of them are pretty useful to any arts organization.
Yeah. I mean, even the accessibility one, not even arts organizations.
Right.
That's just like anyone.
I know that I go back to the grant writing ones when I'm writing grants. I'm like, oh, I need tips from Cheryl or whoever's leading them. So yeah, skim back through the archives and see if anything relates to you. The marketing stuff, that also. Yeah,
there's marketing stuff. There's financial management, fundraising. Because it's been about 4 years that we've been doing this, there's a lot on there, and we try to get really great facilitators who really know what they're talking about, so they're really good resources. So the next one's creating effective boards, and then we have one on clarifying community engagement, which I will talk about in a second because I'm going to talk about our community engagement resource. And that's April 4th, and then May 2nd we have supporting volunteers for success, which is basically volunteer training and support. And that came directly out of some conversations with presenters. I heard them asking each other questions like, do you train your volunteers on this? How do you deal with someone who's had training and then isn't following the training and needs further support, or that kind of thing? So that's just an example of how we really try to listen to what people are talking about and need, and then offer webinars on that. So that's webinars. Feel free to type if you have any questions about that, and I will talk about the last item on my list, and I think it's the last on your list as well.
Yeah.
Which is Arts Engage. So Arts Engage is a separate website run by Ontario Presents, artsengagecanada.ca or Arts Engage Canada, but you can actually type either URL. And it's about community engagement. So the reason we're having a clarifying community engagement webinar is there are a lot of different understandings of what community engagement means, and there's sort of a scale, like there's audience development, there's outreach, and there's community engagement, and they're very intertwined. Basically, the idea is getting people more involved with the arts and engaging people through the arts. So at its best, community engagement means creating relationships for their own sake with your community. And then out of that, figuring out, okay, what can we do together through the arts to celebrate the community, bring people together, or address a specific social issue in some cases. And it's really allowing the community to direct that. Whereas often outreach and audience development is more, okay, me as a presenter or an artist, I have a project and I'm just going to invite the community to be involved with it. But really, like real community engagement, in that definition of it, is the community kind of directs what's happening and is actively involved in creating the art and enjoying it. Because that's really how you get people to understand the value of art, is when they both create it and experience it as created by a professional artist. So we're basically, the point of Arts Engage is to help people understand that and to encourage presenters originally, and then also really anyone involved in the arts, to do more of that and try out community engagement. So there's a lot of resources available on there. If you're interested at all in community engagement the way I'm talking about it, or even just outreach, you want to get started with some sort of outreach, it's a really good place to go. There's various tabs on there. It's easier if you're looking at it, but I'm just going to briefly go over them because they could be a bit confusing. So it starts with one called the practice, which is basically the theory behind community engagement. One called the presenter, that goes over the presenter's role in a community engagement project. The artist, self-explanatory, it's the artist's role. And then one called engage, which is basically if you're like ready to get started, it's some logistical support, like things like budgets and evaluation, resources on how to do this. And then there's a tab called resources, also self-explanatory. There's a lot on there and we're always adding to it. And then I think the best place to start is actually, I think it's the last tab called Idea Box. And that's examples of real community engagement projects that have happened in Ontario and beyond. We're also adding to that, and we also want to continue adding to that. So if you are working on a community engagement piece or you have finished one, please get in touch with me, or you can just submit it directly on there, but I encourage you to talk to me about it. And we want to hear about it. We really want people to share their projects, even if it's, I'm just starting a community engagement project, I don't really know what I'm doing or where it's going to go. That's really interesting and important to share with your colleagues, because then we can all learn from each other and we can update people how it goes as you continue on your project. So that's the idea. Arts Engage also has its own e-newsletter that you can sign up for on the website. And that's every other month and basically highlights a real community engagement piece, usually in Ontario. And then also it just adds like what's happening on the website, so new resources that we've added or things like that. Anything else about Arts Engaged you can think of?
I just think, like, go and check it out and see cool ideas of what you could be doing in your community. I think the important thing is that, I mean, there is a scale, as Natalie was talking about, from audience development all the way to community engagement, but it doesn't matter where you are on the scale. Right. Start, you can try something cool, even if you don't have a lot of resources. I know that SPARC also has the Collaborative Community Initiatives Fund, which sounds really cool, and it sounds like maybe, you know, if you need a little...
Get some funding to help you do this work.
To do a community engagement project.
Thank you to SPARC, yay.
I say we, I mean, not like I've been doing this work exactly, but we have hired a community engagement expert, Gail Farron, who's been involved in doing workshops and helping us develop the resources that are on the website. So there's a lot of good stuff there. I went to her workshop. I was blown away. I learned a lot. Yeah, what would you say if someone was going to like look at one thing on the website would be like the best place to go?
I think the idea box is the best place to start, just because it's like concrete, this is a project that happened, and it's inspirational because you can see.
Yeah. And do you have a favorite project that's on there right now?
We just added a video for one called Matters of the Heart, which happened in Sioux Lookout last year. And I think the video is like a nice engaging way to really see what happened, and they talked to some of the participants. That was kind of a pilot, smaller project, but...
and what was it about?
It was about bringing together the Indigenous community and the non-Indigenous community, and specifically engaging youth in that community through... They brought in a specialist group that engages people through hip hop. So that was really cool. They did a one-day like hip hop workshop with both youth from a high school and adults like teachers and social workers, and brought them together through dance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that one's like very heartwarming too.
It is, and because there's a video, like you can see
the
people's reactions.
Yeah,
which is really nice. So that's a good place to start. Any questions before we start to wrap up? Maybe give people a second if they want to type.
Yeah, anything. I know there's a delay. Just trying to think if there was any resources that we missed. I mean, I just wanted to say that one other website that Ontario Presents administrates, if you're an artist, is I want to showcase .ca.
Yes.
I want to showcase .ca.
I think so.
We'll put the link in the comments. That's just an opportunity for artists to apply for a lot of major performing arts conferences in one place.
So it's Ontario Contact, and then a bunch of other
across North America.
A bunch of other conferences and showcases.
If you want to save some time and you're applying to conferences, check it out.
Yeah. And then I guess we should share our. Rebecca asked us to share our favorite resources that are not from Ontario Presents. Do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm not quite sure what to share, but I decided to share with you this paper that was commissioned by Kapukoa called The Value of Presenting. And I did put the link in the description there. I go back to this paper time and time again because it's just a study with some statistics and some information about why presenting is really important, what presenting organizations can do for their communities, and not only is it really interesting and like validating to read about why the work that we do is so important. It's also just really great place to go if you need like language for a grant, or if you're like justifying your organization to your municipality, anything like that. You can go there and pick up some statistics or some language as to why presenting performing arts is so valuable to communities. So check it out. And check out Kapukoa's website. I mean, they're a national presenting arts service organization, and they're equal.
They have a lot. Yeah. Cool. And then the one thought I would share is called artsengagecanada.com. Ours is Arts Engage Canada. So this one's US based, and it's actually run by one person. His name's Doug Borick. He's a US based consultant, and he has some really great resources and blog posts, articles about community engagement, what it is, how you do it. So we also link to some of his articles through Arts Engage, but going directly to his website I think is useful if you're at all interested in this kind of work. All right.
So
we did it.
I think we did it. Awesome. Thanks for joining us on this expert chat. If you want to contact us with any more questions, absolutely. We'll put our info in the comments, but I'm Kaylee, CEILIDH, at ontariopresents.ca.
And I'm Natalie, NATALIE, at ontariopresents.ca.
Just email Natalie. Her name's way easier.
Just some people spell it with an H, so that's
true.
The only difference.
You're right. And
keep an eye on the Facebook group for more info about the upcoming expert chats.
Yeah, I think SPARC's planning quite a few, and I think they're going to be pretty cool. So you can share this. The recording's going to stick around, so if you missed the first half, you can watch it or share it with others.
Or you want to refer back to something we said, it'll be available. And we will be in Cobalt for the SPARC Symposium.
Oh yeah, we're really excited. Hopefully we'll be able to meet a lot of you because this community seems fantastic.
Yeah, so come say hi.
Okay, have a great Monday afternoon.